Peace and blessings, everyone. Welcome back to the Rose Garden Vibes, y'all. We are back with another vibe session here on my YouTube channel. Now, some of you, again, may be seeing this on YouTube, which is the Rose Garden Vibes, and others may be seeing this on my Patreon site, which is the Rose Garden Sanctuary. Either way, welcome. I'm excited to have you back here vibing out with me yet again. Okay, y'all. So before we get into the nitty gritty, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And definitely make sure you hit the link in my bio, because not in my bio, but in the description section, because I will be having the blog that is attached to this link below, as well as the way that you can navigate the waters to get to my Patreon site and become a Patreon on my Patreon site. All right. Now, I want to let the disclaimer be known that this may ruffle a little feathers, because we are talking about toxic masculinity as well as toxic feminism, okay? As always, I will try to keep the videos, short and to the point as best as possible. So let's get into it, y'all. All right, everyone. So before we get into the nitty gritty, I want to let it be known that this is for discussion, right? I do not want this vlog to be seen as a way of excusing behaviors, or calling anybody out, right? This is a meeting of the minds. This is more so a call for men and women to come together and discuss things, right, in a safe, healthy, open environment, without the pointing of fingers, shaming, belittling, all of those things, right? So with that being said, when it comes to toxic masculinity, we hear this word thrown around a lot, right? And when you look it up, it typically refers to, habits, beliefs, traits, and things of that nature that can be seen as violent, harmful to oneself and others. It also refers to being very aggressive, and lacking or not willing to open up that capacity to experience emotions, validate emotions, put language to emotions, or sometimes it may look like the avoidance of emotions when it comes to toxic masculinity. Now, in the same breath, when it comes to using the word toxic masculinity, we do also oftentimes see toxic masculinity as a way to shame men for being very passionate. It can be used to shame men because they are stepping into the role as a protector or as a provider. It can be used as a way to shame a man for defending himself, whether it's him having to physically defend himself or just verbally standing up for himself, as him verbally standing up for himself, or his beliefs and how he feels, right? And that can do the exact opposite of what we oftentimes call men to do, which is to open up or step up and be a man, right? And then sometimes it can be a little counterproductive, because on one hand we're telling men to step up and be men, however on the other side of that coin we then shame them and scream toxic masculinity when they are doing that thing that we are calling them to do. So it can sometimes be a little confusing, right? Also, there are rightful times when we do call out the toxic masculine trait. However, I think sometimes it behooves us to be mindful of what it is to step into that masculine energy, and also what it is to be a man within this society, especially when it comes to Black men, right? Also, on the other hand of that, there is a such thing as toxic feminism. Now, when you look up what that entails and what that looks like, there are many perspectives, there are many definitions, and it can be quite confusing. And I do believe that there are two sides to the coin of what it is um, to characterize toxic feminism. So on the one hand, when we look at that word and we do the research behind what it is, right? There are some perspectives that share that toxic feminism looks like taking on a overly masculine role. And I don't want to say role, but stepping into your masculine energy a little too much, or living in your masculine energy. And I want to be clear that when I'm speaking of masculine energy, I'm not talking about male being male presenting, right? Or, being a tomboy. No, we are talking about certain characteristics that take up masculine energy, like being very passionate, having that protector kind of guard, right? Being on the over controlling aspect, where you want to control everything, right? You have to know what's happening at all times, having those steps in place, right? Being very rational, being less leaning into, when it comes to leaning into your emotions, you tend to shy away from leaning into your emotions because you have to analyze, you have to push out results, right? That is living in your masculine energy, right? And that's what sometimes toxic feminism can look like, is being aggressive or putting other women down to get ahead, right? It is neglecting or shying away from the nurturing side of the feminine energy that we naturally possess, right? It is turning away from your feminine essence and leaning more into the masculine essence of things, right? Now, when you look at other sides of toxic feminism, there are things out there where it speaks to pretty much living in a realm of vanity to appease patriarchal beauty standards, right? It is being very submissive. So it's the other side of that extreme, right? So toxic feminism can look like either leaning way into the masculine energy to where you completely put off your feminine essence, and then on the other side of that coin, it can look like you leaning super into your feminine side to where you forget yourself, right? And you don't have that masculine feminine balance within you, right? Because I want to be clear that we all have a masculine side and a feminine side. It's finding balance between those realms, right? Because on one side, us as feminine beings, right? Me as a woman, I am going to naturally lean into a very feminine state. I am going to nurture, right? I am going to be warm. I am going to be very fluid, very flexible. I'm going to be very empathic. I am going to be very intuitive, right? I am going to have that divine mother essence, right? Now, on the other side of that, we all have that masculine side of us, that masculine principle, that very structured, that very how on the feminine side, we lean into the spiritual realm more because we are very intuitive. So on the other side of that, on the masculine side, it is being here in the world view, handling things on the physical realm, being very structured, being very detailed oriented, right? Structure, protection, defending, things of that nature, having to take control and take the reins of things, right? And there's much more to it, which if you definitely want me to get into what is feminine energy and what is masculine energy in terms of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, I will definitely do that on a blog and a vlog, right? So we have both of those sides in us. It becomes toxic when we lean overly into one or the other, or we completely push away the other side. That is when it becomes toxic. If we lean too much into our masculine or too much into our feminine, it can be toxic. It can be self-sabotaging, right? And then if we push the other aspect away, that means that we are neglecting a side of us. We are trying to suppress a side of us. And if we're trying to suppress something internally, of course we are going to suppress it outwardly as well. So that can be toxic as well, because again, it's harming yourself and it's harming somebody else. And that is when something is toxic. It becomes harmful. Too much of anything is harmful. Too much of anything can be toxic. If you eat too much meat, it can harm your body. If you consume too much dairy, it can harm the body. If you consume too much of certain vegetables and you're lacking protein or whatever else, it can be harmful. It's finding that balance, learning how to work with the other. And that's why we have things like the yin and the yang, right? That's why we have the balancing of the scales. It's because it is about balance. And right now you see a great divide. And that is why I titled the blog that I'm going to tag in the description, The Great Divide, because there is a great divide. We are very quick to turn our noses up to men that are masculine men. And then in the same breath, we say, well, where are the real men at? And who is, and who's going to defend our honor, right? Or who's going to stick beside us and stand by us, right? And then on the other hand, on the other side of that coin, when it comes into toxic feminism, we have some sides yelling, well, we don't need the men to defend us. And we have this and we got our, and we got it on our own. And in that's where a lot of women, especially women of color, we live in our masculine, because there are quite a bit of us that are lacking that divine masculine essence. Yes, we can say that there are men that are incarcerated. Yes, we can say that there are men that are not wanting to step up and be men and have a family and, do all the things, right? So yes, that causes us to have to live in the masculine, because we have to protect and provide for ourselves. We have to do all the things to make sure that we are okay, which means that we don't have a lot of time to dwell in the feminine, to flow and to be serene and to be soft. And I'm not saying soft in the essence of, being a simp or being a punk. No, being soft, allowing our guard to be down, allowing us to relax and think of water. Water is flexible. It takes the form of whatever it's in. And water has a depth, right? Water is ever flowing. The moon ties into the water, has many phases. Water takes many phases. There's a lot of depth to this when it comes to living in the feminine. And we have to realize how to balance the two. Men and women must learn to balance the two. Learning how to be fluid and then having that control factor. Learning to be soft, but then having that rigidness and that protective armor. Learning to be empathic, but still tapping into the rational side of things. Learning to be very passionate, right? But then still having that, that serene peaceness about you. Being aggressive, right? And then being calm. There's a great divide because we are suppressing the other side of us. We are not allowing that other side to express itself and share itself, which means that we are not allowing ourselves to learn how to dwell within both and learning and understanding the two. And that's why I started this with saying this is meant for a greater dialogue, because when we are shunning the other, it creates a bigger divide between man and woman. when there needs to be an understanding, when there needs to be space and capacity for both to express themselves and hear each other. Things are a lot more than black and white, right? That's why you have that gray area. Even in the yin and the yang, there's black and white, but then within that speck of darkness, that's light. So within that speck of femininity, there is still a masculine essence. And then in the light, even there's a speck of darkness. So even in the masculine, there's still a speck of femininity. And I don't mean speck like a little doop, because when you look at the symbol, it's massive, but then there's still space. There's still space for the other. And then they mesh in and they flow into each other. So is masculinity toxic? No. And there's the capacity for it to be. Is femininity or feminism, being feminine, is that toxic? No. And is there capacity for it to be? Yes. One is not greater than the other. When we look at some women, right, they have a masculineness about them. Because when we look at certain TV shows, right, there's the arguing, there's the hostility, right, there's the aggression, there's the backstabbing, right? It seems as though some of the women dwell in their masculine energy. And maybe that's how they were brought up. Maybe that's all they know. And is there still space for there to be a softness there? Is there space for something more? Absolutely. And that's what we have to be willing to understand and open up to. More understanding, more empathy, more dialogue, more space for the air to clear and information to digest and settle within mind, body, and spirit. So that is the vibe session. Let me know what you think in the comments. Share this and open the dialogue. Peace and blessings.